Hey guys, Mike Warren here, and this is video number 1 of 2 where I'm going to show you how to fractionalize a foreclosure property, a regular property that's not in foreclosure, a short sale, whatever you want to do. We're going to talk about that, but the first part is we got to acquire our properties. Now there are a couple of considerations that you need to take into account. One is you want to decide, well, why do you want to fractionalize and what is fractionalize a short sale or a foreclosure mean? Fractionalizing a property is nothing more than, and I'm sure you have heard the phrase a timeshare. What we're going to do is we're going to create a miniature version of a timeshare on a property. Now typically you want to do this on your higher end vacation type properties. You don't want to do this on a property that's in your neighborhood. This is not going to work for that, okay? But if you want a second home and you want to be able to use that second home pretty much any time you want, and you want to have the property owned free and clear, where you can get, let's say, 5 to 12 weeks of usage out of that property, whether it's in the mountains, like I live in the mountains, so I want to ski. So you could use it in the mountains or you could use it in the beach. Either of those areas, that's where people like to go for vacation. So you'll get a lot of people who say, hey, I want to have a part ownership in that. Well, a timeshare, the way a timeshare works is they take a property, they'll essentially sell 1 week to 52 different people. Okay, so they'll sell each week around the year for that property, and they'll sell it for a whole lot of money. So they'll take a property that, let's say a high-end $1 million home, they'll turn around and they'll sell that, and they'll make 5, 6, sometimes $7 million out of that single property by doing the timeshare method. Now we're not going to sell it to 52 people. Okay, for us to avoid some of the timeshare issues and laws, we have to keep it under 12. So 12 or less. We don't have any of the guidelines when we're doing a fraction. So we're going to break up our property into 12 segments. So technically each person, or let's say you do 12 people, each person can break it down. Okay, so let's kind of do this up here on the board. You're going to break this down into 12 different people. Okay, you could do less, but you don't want to go more. So we're going to look at 12 people. So each person, this essentially means this is one person gets it per month, okay? So if one person is getting it on each month, which is cool, you don't necessarily want it for the whole month, right? You're not going to go on vacation for a month, but you may go 4 or 5 times a month to that particular property. If it's at the beach, you may say, hey, you know what, I want 2 weeks in June, and I want another 2 weeks in August. Well, there's 4 weeks, that's a month. And you'll have some off weeks or floating weeks because some months have 5 weeks, some months have 4, right? So, but kind of work with me. And you can work all this stuff out. I'm just trying to cover the basics. So you're looking at, you'll get a month out of that if you break it up with 12 people. Well, the way that I'm going to show you how to do this is that you can find these properties, you gain control of the property, you essentially sell off 11 weeks, right? The whole property is owned free and clear because you use the sale of those 11 properties to pay off the existing debt, okay? And then you take your month is essentially free, but you own equity in the property. You can have a higher percentage of ownership. You can mix and match on your percentage of ownership. You do all sorts of things. I will cover the details of fractionalizing in my next video. Right now, I want to talk about finding the property that we want to work with. So we're going to look at a couple things, okay? So let's do this. Let me erase this real quick, and we're going to talk about a couple different areas for the types of properties we're looking at. One, we're going to look at foreclosures. I'm going to talk about the pluses and minuses of each one of these. We're going to look at short sales. We're also going to look at subject to. I'll explain each of these, and I'll explain the benefits and the drawbacks to each one, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now on a property that I'm looking at, and that you can duplicate the exact same thing if you want to. So, first off, we're going to talk about foreclosures. Foreclosures, what I like about finding a foreclosure that we can then turn around and fractionalize after the fact is that a foreclosure property, that homeowner is extremely motivated. They're feeling the stress, that pressure of foreclosure bearing down on them, and they say, hey, I want out of this property, I'll just sign the property over. So ultimately, we want the person to just sign the property over. We're not giving them cash for that property. They're going to sign it over to us. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. We have to come up with the cash for all of those back payments in order to bring it current. And then we can take the title of the property, and then we can fractionalize it and use the money that's coming in from let's say our other 11 people, if we're doing a month at a time, from our other 11 people, they will then pay off that existing balance but that's going to require some cash either from us or from a partner, or if we get cash in advance from our 11 people, we can use that cash to bring a current or to flat out pay it off in advance. So you can set all this up and have it all done in advance. The risk that I see when working with a foreclosures are great. The risk is that you have to come out of your pocket if you don't have your 12 buyers or your 11 buyers in advance. You have to come out of your pocket, or you have to get a private person to come in and lend you the money to bring the property current so that you can stop and wipe out the foreclosure. So you essentially then take over the property. So that's your risk there, is that you may have some cash that has to come out of your pocket. The second option is dealing with a short sale. Now, why do we want to do a short sale? In a short sale, we can get the property for a whole lot less than what's currently owed on it. So we can build in instant equity, not only for us, for you, but also for your other 11 people. And that's very, very powerful. You're building lots of equity. The downside to dealing with a short sale is you got to have all of your cash up front. Now, that means you got to put your 11 buyers in advance. You let them know that, hey, we're buying a property, we're going to find a foreclosure, we're going to do a short sale. And on these vacation homes, folks, there's not a lot of buyers out there for them. So guess what? Banks are even more willing. That's what I'm experiencing right now, and I know a lot of our students are experiencing the exact same thing. They're experiencing that these banks want to dump these vacation homes because they're plummeting in value. Well, not plummeting in value, but they've gone down in value, and they're much harder to sell because it's a narrow market. You need people with cash. Well, when you sell a property to 11 different people, instead of saying to somebody, hey, here's this $1 million house, right? Instead of saying you got to come up with $1 million in cash, you have to qualify for $1 million in loans, they only have to come up with maybe $100,000, or they have to come up with a $100,000 loan. You can do all of those things. You can sell fractionals, and there's financing for these fractionals as well. That's really cool. I'll talk about that again in the second video. But what we're dealing with here when we're doing short sales, we get that property way in the market, but it requires us to have all of our cash up front so that we can buy that property at a tremendous discount and then pass that savings on to our other 11 members. So that's a benefit and a drawback of a short sale. The next one is a subject to. Subject to is where I can find a homeowner who's not in foreclosure, but let's say it's a person who has listed their house. For instance, I was looking at some single-family houses, some townhouses, and some high-end condos in the Breckenridge and Keystone area, which is near where I live. Okay, it's a couple hours away. And I'm looking at these houses that were recently listed in the MLS, but those listings have expired. So we're approaching the homeowners, and we're doing this actually on more than one property. We're approaching the homeowners, and we're offering the homeowners the ability to sell their house because we're looking to take over payments. That's all it is. We're going to take over their payments. Now, here's the important part. If you didn't catch this, I am not qualifying for a loan in any way, shape, or form. It does not affect my credit, and I don't have to come up with cash out of my pocket like I would with a foreclosure or a short sale. I don't have to come up with cash to do that. Here, I am simply taking over somebody's payments in return for relieving the stress that they have of having to make that monthly payment because they've been trying to sell the property. Let's say the property, when they first bought it, they put down a nice down payment. They put down 20%, which is pretty typical for a vacation home. They put down 20%, but now that property's gone down in value. Now it's gone down 15, maybe 20% in value. Well, they look at it and say, well, gosh, I can't sell this property because even after I pay the real estate commissions, I will still have to take cash out of my pocket just to sell it. They're trying to do it, but they can't do it. And I come in and I offer them the ability to simply just walk away from the property, and I will take over the payments. Now, my goal is within 12 to 24 months that I will have that completely sold off where I have my 11 people. I give myself plenty of time, by the way, to do this. Again, I'll cover those details in the second video. But I have plenty of time to get my buyers to come in to essentially pay off that loan, okay? And then I will have the property free and clear so it's out of the name. Now, technically, I could just leave it sitting in their name and just bring in other owners who agree to make a portion of the monthly payment. That I don't like so much, and I'll explain why when we talk about fractionalization later. But when I'm dealing with a subject to property, guess what? I'm taking over their payments, which means I can own the property. It doesn't show up on my credit because the mortgage is not in my name. I agree to make the monthly mortgage payments, but I can also get an extra 2, 3, sometimes 4 or more months additional ownership in that property where I'm not making payments for another 2 to 4 months, which is great. All right, so it saves you a lot of cash flow, allows you to bring in your people even after the fact that before you even brought, so you don't have